despite the pandemic. I am Yashodhara Bose, the event coordinator of Team Esteem and the moderator of today's seminar. On behalf of my team, I welcome you all to the sixth webinar of the seminar series called Symposium. Esteem is the Solar Decathlon Society of Heriot Watt University. We participate in the SDME competition held in Dubai by building a smart home to tackle problems of climate change. Our aim through Symposium is to elaborate our field of expertise and provide a learning platform about the different technologies, principles, and ideologies involved with Esteem. We will be having a practical learning interactive segment at the end of today's seminar. So if you have any questions related to the topic to our guest speaker, feel free to drop in the messages on the chat box or raising your virtual hands up through the MS Teams feature. We'll be recording the seminars as well. So if you want to refer to it later or show it to your friends, you can see snippets of it on our social media platforms or ask for the recording link later via email. Also, we would be giving out certificates to everyone. So if everyone could just type in your email IDs at the chat box, it would be great because we will be sending the certificates and you can post about it on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and tag us. And that would be great for us as well. So without further ado, I would like to welcome our guest speaker for the seminar today, Ayman Darve, who will be speaking on CSR in building detailed design stages. Ayman is currently pursuing the master's degree in architectural engineering from Heriot Watt University, is working as the intern with Buro Happold, and is the former student vice team leader and the current team advisor of Team Esteem. She will be covering topics like corporate social responsibilities, different project development stages, and so on. So over to you, Ayman, and good luck. Let's have fun, guys.
Thank you. And hi, guys. Nice to meet you. And it was a great introduction, so thank you. Yeah. So I'll see if I can share my screen and we can go from there. There we go. I think we're on it. I hope you guys. Yeah.
Yep, we can see it. Yep.
Okay. Perfect. So as Yashodra's already told you, it's about CSR in building design stages. So essentially, we're going to split it up so you understand why they come together, because I'm sure we've all heard of CSR on its own, really common in business, to be honest. And then we've all heard of building design stages for us because it's also in our deliverables, for example, in Team Esteem. So deliverables are also structured in the form of our design stages that you'd use in industry, and quite commonly it's done with REBA, but I'll go more into that. So first we'll go through building detailed design stages. So with Berkman Buro Happold, I've learned that REBA is the most common way to find out how to do your stages, and basically it's how you form the building eventually. So you can't just draw a floor plan and then send it off from an architect to an engineer and be like, build it from there, because it takes a bit more refinement than that. So essentially it's stages of refinement essentially. So here's just a quick 2 sentence of what it essentially does. And it also creates a structure for everyone else to follow through, to know where you go and how to provide what. So for example, in our details for our deliverables, we get given criteria of what we need to meet, and as we probably all noticed, that it gets harder and more intricate as the time goes on. Essentially apply the same stuff to REBA and to real building detail design is what I realized. So you'll start off with a basic type floor plan and you kind of work up to there, and you'll eventually have a massive Revit drawing with plumbing detail of HVACs and everything else you can think of. So here it is. So there's main 7 stages, and the main detailed design stages are from 2 to 4. So the first is prep, is kind of where you talk to the client, see what they want. You have the architect present, and you probably have some engineers present. But then also what is new, and I think it's quite innovative, is you have the sustainable team as well. So essentially they can tell you of where you can go wrong or right from the get-go. So if there's something you need to be aware about the locality, any kind of stuff that can be nipped in the bud straight away in the briefing, or any kind of ideas that can be developed from there, we kind of get an idea there. So it's almost like an initial briefing with the client on hand, and then you kind of walk away with that and you come up with a concept. And then obviously spatial coordination, that would make sense. Again, the architecture and the engineers work heavily together throughout the entire stage, which is really important to point out, because sometimes what happens is if the architect leaves too early, you're kind of left with a floor plan that you're stuck with because you don't have contact, and vice versa. So if the engineers go away, the architects find it difficult too. So that's why these design stages also tell employees whereabouts their importance will come and where they need to fit into the master plan almost. So now, Now that I've given like a brief, because I don't want to give too much as well, because I want to see where you guys stand, is a CSR. So that's corporate social responsibility. So you're probably wondering exactly what that means in layman's terms. So it is a good sentence that I heard actually by a manager was doing right by all involved at every stage of the process. And I don't think I could sum it up better than that, to be honest. Ooh, sorry about that. So basically in construction, it's actually more looked at now heavily than it was ever before, because so many problems that we're realizing are just happening and we don't really fix them quite quickly enough, and they kind of escalate more than they need to. So essentially the main four things are like legality, ethics, economic, and philanthropic. Sorry. So basically, it can be anything to do with any of the employees at any point. So when it comes to CSR, you have to be very careful to basically do right by everyone at every process. But that also means people that might not be involved on the project or actually working on it, but shareholders. And shareholders can be essentially people who live there, live in the locality. Someone who will visit the site, for example, the audience, who you're catering it to, viewers. It can literally be any public person can apply to CSR, but where it's more missed in our construction industry is actually the workers. So, for example, there's a lot of times where workers aren't treated appropriately, or there's mishaps on site which could be easily like faulted by the health and safety and kind of nipped in the bud there. To even such big things like paperwork, where there's misfaults from the architects to the engineers and the engineers to the architects. And it's a lot of communication error is what CSR mainly comes down to on a whole agenda of stuff. And having worked alongside my manager now, I've realized that a lot of it is a communication flow, and it's really important to have that. So now where the connection comes in. So here I've written the ease at which a lot of daily minuscule problems in our industry can be easily solved at key design stages, even stage one. So where I said stage one was prep and briefings, that was important because essentially a lot of stuff can be said in the prep and briefing where it could literally make or break a project. So it's really important for all parties involved to be very on hand and listen and vigilant at every stage. So even if you're designing a concept, you need to be aware of the impact that might have on other people and stakeholders in the whole agenda and the stages. So where CSR and detailed design stages come in hand is I feel like a lot of the problems which we miss can be solved easily if we just look at the structure of the design stage and kind of do accordingly and format very like to the T almost. Because what we tend to do is we did this actually in our firm where sometimes you kind of like, oh, that will be addressed later. But instead of doing the whole later thing, you kind of look at, okay, this is what I need to do for the concept, and kind of make sure you're doing right by everyone else involved in that. But as I said, it's very easily said to do, but not easily done. So that's why it's really important for everyone to have an understanding of how difficult it can be, because the right answer is not always the given answer. So whatever might come to mind straight away, there's always going to be another right answer. And social responsibility is very perceptive and very intuitive to each person's background, upbringing, financial status. It can literally be on your whole life and career path. So my perspective might be totally different to yours, but that doesn't make that person right or wrong. So that's when CSR comes at a midpoint where you have to find what's right and wrong, and that's when the big decisions happen and big talks happen where employees and companies have to break down hierarchies to actually listen to the people doing the work as well as people right at the top of the food chain, to make sure that, like especially in construction where hierarchy is so respected, but also just in construction where there's so many people involved in one project that sometimes it's so easy to miss what's right in front of our eyes. So, how do they work together? And I thought the best way to get this is to do an interactive session where you guys kind of get involved, and this is kind of perfect because hopefully no one will be too shy to join in. Is what would you do in these scenarios? And just a disclaimer, there's no right or wrong answers at all. So feel free to say as you feel, because everyone has, like I said, their own perspective, and there's no right or wrong, honestly. I'm just curious to what other people think, because that's how we're gonna progress and go forward and elevate the way we make choices, and hopefully we're the next generation of engineers and hopefully even CEOs. So we need to know what we're doing is right by not ourselves, but our employees and our businesses. So I thought, what's the best way then to put some life scenarios out for you? So, scenario number one. To support and enhance the strive for gender equality, companies stating they will ensure a specific amount, example 1 in 3, of their uptake in employees would be females. How does that make you guys feel? So, in order to like think about how to answer that question, it's like, what is the longevity and the consequences of that? So, is it wise taking up 1 in 3 people to be females? Is there a counter argument? What is the meaning and effect on morality? So, is it as simple as I will definitely take up 1 in every 3 people of females? Work output changes. So it's like, so now is it skill set based or is it based on gender? And does that mean gender equality, or does that just now mean that we're forcing an agenda? And fourth point is, these are just like stuff I put up, misalignment between thought and action. So we can see that the thought is there to do the right thing, and in some cases this might be the right move. But do we agree that the thought and the action match what they're trying to do? So yeah, feel free to speak. Am I gonna have to call someone out?
Can you see the screen, Ayman, like the chat or and everything?
I can't see the chat, no.
Oh, okay. So till now only I have commented on the chat, but Rahan and Osama, feel free to, share your opinions as well. So what I had written is, I think there should be equality depending on the skills, and they should be hired irrespective of the gender. Is what my thought process would be like.
Yeah, so what do you mean by that? Like, can you elaborate?
So, like for example, you were saying like 1 in every 3 should be hired or something like that. So I think there shouldn't be any norm like that, maybe, because like now since like everyone's evolving and the generation is changing and there's equality everywhere. So even in the workspace, like we should be given equal opportunities. And if there's like the skills are like as it's the same for the boy and the girl, then it doesn't matter if you're a male or female, you should be hired equally and paid equally.
Yeah, exactly. So what would your like take be, or what would your idea to fix this situation be? So say like a company is noticing that they have a lack in female employees and they want to fix that. How would you say to go about this? Like instead of saying 1 in 3 of our uptake will be females.
Mm, I don't know, like maybe it could be like a meeting with all the staff, or maybe a form that could be circulated and everyone could give their opinions on it and see and measure the pros and cons and see how to go about it. I guess I don't know.
Yeah. No, there's literally no right or wrong answers. Osama, do you have a take? Sorry to call you out.
Yeah, do I just speak out or do I type it down?
Yeah, yeah, you can speak out.
Cool. So, well, yeah, like you said, I guess that's one way to go about it. Like identifying what, like, how the people feel inside the company and finding out what the pros and cons are.
Yeah,
I guess that's one way to go about it.
yeah,
But yeah, I guess I don't know. I guess it's my own view on it, but I feel like um, like she mentioned in the comment, like in the message section, where she'd mentioned how they should be, where they should be mostly looked into for their skills rather than what their gender is. But yeah,
yeah. Um, do you have any more like scenario of the way to deal with it? Because then obviously I'll give my view, but I don't want to like influence any of you guys. So I'll let you go first.
well, no, actually, why don't you go ahead and explain it, and that way we'll actually because I feel like I'll need a bit of you to explain. I'll need
Okay.
you to explain
True,
before I can
yeah.
actually think about the
Yeah.
scenario myself.
Okay. So there's no right or wrong answer, but this is something like we discussed in our work, and it kind of like struck me because obviously, like I'm sure even Yashodra and Harris will understand, as being females in the industry, obviously you want to have equal opportunity to apply for these jobs and get picked. But when it comes down to it, you want to be picked because your skill set matches the needs of the job description. So hearing that the 1 in 3 people need to be females would kind of like make my mind go to a place where it's like, oh, did I get picked for the wrong reasons? Did I get picked to be a percentage, or did I get picked because I actually meet what they need? So I guess the way I looked at it and I suggested my fix was essentially to make gender not an option on the application form. So we've noticed it's going away quite quickly anyway, but I'd say pretty much take it away entirely, so that, because as it's a fact at the moment, unfortunately, that the people in engineering mostly are male. Obviously the numbers and the percentages of females are rising a lot recently, which is amazing, but at the moment it is very male dominated field. So the only way to make it equal opportunity and not, I don't know whether that would be gender equality, but I think it would be as well, to be honest, because essentially you just kind of take away the whole male and female gender totally. So you're left with just applicants. And then based on the applicants, you pick out of their skill set. Because at the end of the day, if it's my business, I want to pay someone because they meet what I need, not because they fill a percentage. So I'd pick what I need from there and then see what happens to be female, or like eventually what happens is female or male. But at the end of the day, that's the point, is you've kind of taken away the gender aspect, so it makes it equal opportunity for anyone to apply, is my idea behind it, I think. So I don't know, does anyone have any thoughts on that, or is that a bad idea?
I think that it seems like the only way that it could be practical, because anything else where you're ensuring a certain amount will be chosen, it's not practical, especially in engineering, when something like that where it was 1 in 3, or it was, if it was 50% like Buro Happold was, then there isn't enough female engineers going into engineering to even make up for that. So like you're saying, with going into a job, if you're a female and you're seeing that all these women are being employed because they have to do it, not because they necessarily want you, but because they have to, then that doesn't mean equality at all. That's kind of like, it's not really, it's almost discrimination because you're a female, that's why you're getting it, because it's not really helping. I wouldn't say it's helping women engineering if they're getting given stuff, because they're, all the women are smart enough and work hard enough to work for it on their own without just needing handouts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, would you have any like suggestion of another idea to go about it, like other than maybe just like totally taking away gender from an application?
See, I think that that's a good idea as well, to take the gender away from the application. But then when it comes to interview process, then that can come up as a problem again. So it's hard without having a minimum amount of women as a factor, unless you kind of, because there's definitely got to be a root of the problem of why they wouldn't be chosen.
Yeah, so I guess it's a balance of perception as well as just anonymity, I guess.
So being able to, I guess, change the mindset at the root of the problem, but I guess that takes time as well, and we have to have women employed by big engineering firms and doing great stuff that they're capable of to be able to change a lot of the minds of kind of old school like male ideas.
Yeah. And it's definitely, I say, changing quite rapidly recently, for sure. But yeah, I guess it's these little changes we could make on purpose to kind of further complement the changes that are naturally coming about, which is great on its own. Does anyone else have any suggestions, or should we go to the next scenario?
We could go to the next scenario. I like the suggestion of this one.
Okay, cool. Again, yeah, it's very much just based on your own perception. So I'm just intrigued because I feel like without talking about it, there's no way to get rid of it. And something that we did at Buro Happold, which I think is really great, is talking about it, and the hierarchy of it is kind of broken down where we can literally talk to the CFO, the CEO, the COO, and they'll kind of get our views in because they can't make decisions without having their employees behind them, which if adapted by all firms, yeah, it's not easy. And what I'm saying is maybe not realistic on the stage where a firm's so huge, but a way of just kind of gathering employee importance and making them feel like they have a say, which I'd say something in Esteem we do really well as well on, because we're always taking votes. We're always very inclusive of everyone and everyone's choices. And if anything's kind of being questioned, we'll have another meeting on it where it's solely focused on that bracket. So I'd say we're definitely going in the right form. But yeah, we're a small, very innovative, very forward-thinking team. So it'd be nice to kind of spread that to the rest of the industry. Yeah. But yeah, scenario 2. So your company is taking up a project for a very affluent client, which will be a game changing for business. However, this project could severely damage the vicinity of the build and come at the detriment of people's livelihood, employment, and environment. So how would you feel about that? So some stuff that I said, which you could consider while I was trying to answer this is, and again, there's no answer, is hierarchy important? So by that I mean, who gets to make the final decision, do you think, and at what cost? So does there have to be a overall like agreement, or can someone else make the last decision, do you think, on this? Morality of it. So it's like, what feels right to do, but then realistically, would that happen? And if not, why not? And how could we fix that almost? And obviously, there's no easy fix for any of these problems because it's very much up to perception. And finances again. So we have to remember that although we talk about the construction industry and trying to make it go forward in CSR and kind of put everyone first, and the design stage is more efficient essentially, we have to remember it's still a business where they have to make money to run. So if this is a game-changing like project for the business, what are the costs of letting it go for the business, and is it worth dropping it for? And the last one, knowing some of the risks or losses, does it still make sense to continue? Why, yes or no? So one of the risks I've already mentioned is, for example, finances, but I'm sure there's a multitude of risks you guys can probably see off the bat, or even pros of this. So weighing them up in your head or in your own ideology, do you think this is still, would you go ahead? Would you stop it? Would you change something at our detailed design stage where it could be like, okay, at this design stage, we can kind of fix this? So yeah, what's your weigh-ins?
What I think is like, I don't know, I mean, like, if it's, not good for some people, like you mentioned that it's, it's the detriment of people's livelihood, and it could cause some damage to the employment and the environment. So I think we need to consider all these things, because anyways, with the general scenario out there, like, climate change, global warming, there's a lot of problems anyway happening all over the world, so we shouldn't contribute towards more damage. And even if it's a game changer for the business, I think it would be a good thing for our reputation as well, if we are also saving the environment in some way and helping people, better their lives. So we need to see how we can have a good business strategy along with not harming the environment and the people. So maybe a discussion over that would be good, I guess.
Yeah. So would you say, I know this is not an easy question at all, but would you have a fix in mind, or any kind of narrative where this kind of works, or you kind of just end the process of going through this project at just the briefing stage of the design, where you hear the project, but then the sustainable team kind of brings up that, look, a lot of people are going to lose their houses, there's going to be some factories gone down for this, and you just kind of end it there? Or do you think there's another way?
Maybe we could have another, like a subcommittee who works towards brainstorming solutions for, going ahead with this, but also like having a solution to not harm, or finding sustainable ways to do the project. or finding a solution for even the people living in that locality where the project is being built. So a team could research ways and find a solution to not create a lot of harm, because if you've already invested some amount of money in the design phase, so it would make sense to to do a little more research and find suitable solutions for it.
Yeah. I mean, a project which comes to mind straight away as soon as I think of this is, don't know whether you guys have heard of it, but it's the Ambani family in India. They're one of
Yeah,
the families in the world. And when they built their, it's I think one of the most, or the most expensive house in the world at the moment.
yeah, yeah, in
Um,
Mumbai. Yeah,
yeah, and that kind of shook up in Mumbai and like the way it is, and it kind of destroyed a lot of people's homes, jobs. It really harmed the environment, but again, it's there and it's built. So there's still a lot of arguments around that and it existing. So it's kind of like there's a real life project where it has happened and it's gone ahead because again, hierarchy came into play, and then also finances. So unfortunately, like the house must have made billions for the people constructing and everyone involved, to be honest. And I mean, it did stir up a lot. It was very game changing because I mean, it's the most expensive house in the world. But I think it's all of our personal perceptions of whether that risk was worth having it now. So yeah, does anyone have any other like ideas or takes on it?
I guess I'll speak then.
Go for it.
Yep. I think it's a hard one to decide from a business point of view, especially because you mentioned, I guess that was kind of a personal, like it was a family's house, right? That you mentioned.
Yeah.
But governments will do this all the time with the buildings that they're making, whether it be roads because they have to knock down houses because they get in the way of the roads, or they're building airports, which like certain businesses will have to close down if it's near an airport, and people will lose their houses as well, and people will move, and the house prices will kind of lower. And obviously, a company has to take that on board as well. So I think that they'd have to look at. So you said severely damaged. So they'd have to look at kind of their overall company image, because a lot of companies won't care if they've already got a damaged image. But if it's a company striving to kind of be more progressive, they'd have to obviously look at it overall and probably decide that if they do take on something that is going to look bad, if it's in the limelight and on social media, then it's probably going to have more harm to the company than good in the long term.
Right.
So I think that if you were a company, you'd probably have to go against it with the long-term effects, unless you wanted to stay dealing with these kind of companies that are going to ruin. And I don't know how many people are going to be able to morally justify that, unless, like you said, unless it's a huge company that it doesn't really matter morally because there's so many people working on the project that it's just down to numbers.
Yeah.
And not like kind of what you're saying with Buro Happold, where someone like an intern can be speaking to the CEO and have your say in it, whether it's like the chain of communication is so far gone because this company's so huge that it really doesn't matter what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's really important. But do you think there's a way around it for bigger companies? Because obviously, if anything, there's more of a risk to their image, because as we've noticed in the past with even, for example, celebrities, I'm saying it's not necessarily the best comparison, but something that they could have done in the past 10 years can come up on a tweet and kind of tarnish their entire image for the next decade to come. So similarly, I guess for a big business, it could be having the same effect of just like if someone kind of unearths some really bad detrimental project that they took up, it could potentially ruin any more further projects they do get. So do you think there's a fix for bigger companies?
I think a lot of big companies, if they do see the amount of money that's in it, they won't try and bash their brand image as much. And a lot of people will take on almost subcontractors that have taken a blow to their image, and will kind of put it on them, although they're really in charge, and kind of unlink themselves. So I presume that's what they do, because it kind of it puts it all on this other company, right? But they kind of take the benefit from it.
Okay, that's interesting, because that means that they've taken the, I guess, the purposeful action at the construction design stage, which is near the end of it, which is like stage 5 probably, or stage 6. They've decided to kind of put the blame on someone else after having made the conscious decision through stages 1 till 5 to kind of go ahead with this idea and kind of nurture it to what it's become. So do you think morally that's right? And if there's any fix for that, like anyone, you, Ryan, or anyone else can answer that.
I mean, it's not morally right in any way, but they still go ahead with these plans. To be honest, I mean, take for example the World Cup that's coming up next year, 2022. It's affected a lot of people's lives and stuff, but regardless of all the all the conflicts that people have put forward to boycott the World Cup, it's still going through as is. um but yeah, I don't think there's any more there's no moral way out of it all, to be honest, because they've already gone through with it and it's affected them. But I don't know, but they they can take responsibility of it, and they have taken responsibility over it, but they're still going through with it with me, which means is not as much care as people would like to think towards morality or ethics when it comes to things like this, or where money is involved, things are at high stakes. So yeah.
So would you say, like, I guess I'm not saying this is what you're saying, but I'm just saying, would you say that big companies feel that once they get to a certain growth stage where they kind of so big that they can get away with almost not caring about their employees or like the effect that they have, and kind of get away with it depending on how big they are?
Yeah, I think that's what it is, because like I said, for the World Cup, for example, it's been happening for a really long time. FIFA's developed a brand. They've developed, a whole lot of customer loyalty and brand loyalty over the years. They've got fans following it. They've got a whole bunch of people behind it, sponsors, dealerships, everything behind it. And they've gotten to a point where they're so big, and they're going through with it, and they're getting away with it. There's nothing that seemed to be coming up in any way to to stand against it. People are stand trying their best to bring awareness, but it's not doing as much as they would, I think, a lot of people would like it to do. So at the moment it feels like, yeah, large corporations at the moment are getting away with things like this.
Yeah. So I think that's the whole point of, I guess, discussing stuff like this, because hopefully, obviously, these are large corporations now, which means that there'll probably be large corporations coming from now, depending on the way they're run and their hierarchy. But essentially, this kind of talk and ideas and like throwing about our perceptions can change other people's minds, because it's not as easy as one answer, as you've just noticed, like Ahmed said, and then Ryan. It's like morality can be one thing, but then finances are another, and it is a business. So depending on how big the business is, there's more mouths to feed. So sometimes bigger companies kind of use the thing of, we're a bigger corporation. We have to take some hits to kind of feed the many. For example, COVID was a big part in a lot of firms taking up some choices which they didn't mean to, or they didn't need to or want to. It was just because it kind of let them live for a bit longer and survive in this world. So they almost like had to find a way to just kind of put down the morality for the sake of finances. But it's how important and how much can your brand image suffer for finances? And then I guess it's the idea of arguing, is marketing more powerful and your brand image more powerful than finances to some extent? So can a business endeavor which could critically damage your choices ruin your company's success no matter how big you are? Like there was like the stir up about Amazon and their use of slave labor in some countries, and it was a rumor at the time, and we don't know how much truth there is in that. But it did a lot of damage to their brand image. So it's like, do you think engineering firms work the same way, or is there a different mindset when it comes to engineering firms?
I'm not too sure about how it works with engineering firms or not, but maybe it takes about the same blow as it would with Amazon, I guess, because if people found out uh, workers and laborers were being mistreated by certain companies, I guess they wouldn't want to incorporate themselves with that kind of company just for their sake as well. So probably the same kind of backlash you'd expect with Amazon and like how Amazon faced their backlash you'd expect with any other famous top engineering firms, I guess.
Yeah. Again, it's a difficult solution. Would you say there is any kind of solution other than kind of brainstorming and finding a middle ground, and what the middle ground would mean, for example, would be different in each scenario? Is that where it stands, would you say?
Yeah, probably something like that, where they'll try to compromise on certain aspects, but they'll still go through with it, having having to understand that maybe not as many as they anticipated initially would lose out, maybe half, but there is no there's no moral high ground when it comes to that because people are still losing. So yeah, they'll
Yeah.
probably compromise, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up a good point with the World Cup, because I mean, the same happened in London 2020 Olympics over here, where they kind of found a weird moral high ground of the whole, we're kind of gonna urbanize an area which wasn't looked at so greatly, and kind of make it more popular and give it life and provide them with better like style of living. But again, that came at the detriment of a lot of people's houses, jobs. But then the argument was it created more jobs. So yeah, it's always like a balance of what are the losses and what are the gains, and kind of find it. But maybe at the moment, unfortunately, the only thing that we can say is that the project will definitely probably go through. It's just finding the best way to go through with it and do damage control at the same time at each design stage. But yeah. And I guess a follow-up question from that, I know we don't have much time, but there's only one more scenario. Is at what design stage would you think it's important to make a definite decision of, yeah, you're going through with it, no, you're not going through with it, and at what stages can you just not make any more damage control, do you think?
To be honest, I'm not really too sure at which stage.
Sorry, I'll
I'm
put
not yeah.
stages back up, so then it kind of helps. Okay, there you
Okay, yeah.
go. Mhm.
Oh,
But
okay. Yeah, thank you. That helps a lot.
no worries.
But yeah, I guess at the technical like where just before the start of the construction happens, I guess they can make that decision about whether to completely go through with it or not.
I don't know, because I feel like for me personally, I feel like that's a lot of money's probably already been poured into that project by that point. Because start of construction is like, I'd say they've like started ordering the materials, everything's kind of finalized for the floor plan. There's only going to be like minor changes. So I don't know, do you think it's still worth the waste of the money, or like for the bigger good? Because obviously it's like, no, there's no way we should run this project. Or would there be a backlash from that?
Exactly. That's what I was just thinking. Probably go through with it up to a certain extent to see how much backlash there could be, and
Hmm.
then assess the situation then and see whether it's worth going through.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, because another good example of where design stages could have been more well thought out is probably the Parliament building in Scotland, where I'm sure everyone has their own take on that as well. So I mean, it had multiple design stages and then a repeat of stage 4, stage 5, and then stage 4 again, then maybe stage 3, then went back to 5. So it's kind of like, I guess you have to find the right place to just be like, okay, this project's not worth it, or it's not financially viable, it's not sustainable. So yeah, I guess it's probably in the main design stages is what you're saying, right? To kind of stop.
yeah.
Right. That makes sense. And right, last scenario, we've kind of gone over it.
Ryan just wanted to add something. I don't know if he still wants to add something, but he had his hand
Sorry,
up. But I know you can't see the screen,
I
so I
can't
thought I'll
say
just say
anything.
it.
I'm really
Yeah.
sorry. Go.
Yeah.
No, it's okay, Karen. Karen.
No, you can say it now. I'm intrigued.
No, it was just because we were talking about what stage, And I think for a company, when you were talking about how much it costs and it's a waste of money, like before ordering materials, when you're saying it's like going to be a business changing like venture, I think they're probably going to be postponing it. Realistically, they're going to postpone it as long as possible to make a decision and have as long as they can, because the amount of money that they're going to spend over the first few, it will be a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of things, it's probably going to be a minute amount compared to the overall kind of cost of the project. So they probably want to wait till the last minute, right, before they can finalize everything and then make a final decision before they actually go ahead with the.
True, especially if like the main consensus between us all is the fact that the project will 80% of the time to 90% of the time be going through. So I guess if they know they're eventually going to go through it anyway, postponement seems more realistic than just backing out totally. So that makes sense. But yeah, no, thank you. And the last scenario. Okay. So the chance has arrived to expand your business to a whole new country, and that too at a great time as COVID has caused a struggle for the firm. But you find out there is slave labor which may be involved in the construction stage. Do you go through with the offer? So some stuff that you could consider is like the influence internally and externally. So like, for example, can you influence the scenario by being part of it, or can you influence the scenario by not being part of it? And by that I mean the slave labor thing. Like, do you think you can influence it happening and not happening by being part of it, or can it be done without being part of it? And it just doesn't feel right to be involved in such a project. 2, can the situation be handled or avoided at an earlier design stage? So is there a way to kind of discuss another pathway instead of using slave labor? A 3rd point, financial struggles effect. So again, because of COVID, it's a tough decision because you might be struggling as a company, as it says. So this might be a way out for you guys. And number 4, is there a middle ground? So again, is there like a way to have a compromise? So yeah, feel free to go. I can't see hands up, by the way.
Yeah,
So.
Sana, you can go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to say I just joined like very recently, so
Hi.
I'm just gonna answer. I don't know if I needed to know something earlier, but I feel like it's kind of similar to the situation earlier where it's so important to consider all sides of things because there are a lot of factors that weigh into the decision. But I think the most important thing would be like essentially just having the discussion about it before you go through with it. So since you know, okay, there is a chance slave labor may be involved, you definitely like you can't just say, okay, we'll deal with it when it comes, but it has to be like an early on assessment of, okay, what can we do to avoid it? Like you said, let's see if we can influence this somehow before we join or after we join. So beforehand, and then also even if everything kind of like seems to be working out and finally at that point it's like this is going to happen, have some kind of measure at that point as well to take place. And I guess it's kind of similar of earlier is like you would have by that point spent a lot into that project or those projects in general. But and again it's such a like these things can't be black and white, so it's so difficult to really like fix on one kind of side of like this is right and this is wrong. So I just think as long as there are discussions about it and it's talked about beforehand, and not just as in discussed of like, oh yeah, this can happen, but like genuinely set in some kind of actions that can be followed through with, that would be what I think should be done about it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I see that happening. I guess my question would be, in this case, do you think the risk, in your perspective, the risk to continue whilst knowing this is going on, with the idea that maybe, yeah, whilst I get involved, like the way you can influence it might be better because like, oh, we can talk to the clientele, we can find the terms and conditions where like we don't allow this. Is that kind of realistic, or do you think that no, this is something that should be handled way before you get involved with the project?
I don't know if this is for me or but
Yeah.
I think way before, because I think it's pretty unrealistic to think like, oh yeah, let me just go in and like I can totally make changes to everything happening. Like I think that's like a bit naive to think. So I think it would be a case of before you commit, talking to people, companies, whatever, who are in that country already and asking them, okay, what is there anything you guys usually do about this? Finding out from other situations what is done about this. And then when you find that out, then the company has to make a decision of, can we do that as well? And would it be worth, like, because it might cost a bit. So would it be worth it? Would it not be worth it? But it's just like, because the thing is, because it's COVID, right? It's like it's a situation that no one really still knows exactly what to do about it. So I feel like this is something that takes a while to decide, and COVID might make people want to react quickly because they'll think, okay, this is like a desperate kind of lifeline that we have now for our company before it sinks under. So perhaps it would be something that maybe decided a bit rashly, which is another thing. But I have no conclusion on this. Wow, okay.
I
If
think
anyone
that's the
else.
point of like all the scenarios. If there is no like conclusion, that's why I said it's very much like just for me to understand or for you guys to understand like of different viewpoints. And I'm sure I've walking away with something new from you guys, and hopefully the same for you guys. It's like just almost brainstorming, and I'm giving you big examples. CSR happens in minute times every single day in the industry. It can be something as easy as handing over one decision on some electrical piping, like electrical circuit run you're doing, to just even a decision where someone could be considered where it's like, oh, hang on a minute, is that sustainable? Really, am I considering everything involved here? So I'm mentioning to you big movement changes which are really huge to understand and be like, oh, this is at the detriment of this. But it's kind of like finding the balance between how can we handle this? Is it fair? Have we given everyone a voice? And the right answer for your company and even for each individual might not mean the right answer for another company, or maybe even your friend, or even between us we might have like, no, I don't agree with you there. But that's the whole point of it, is discussing it to kind of understand how to make it better, because there's no one right answer to make things better, as you've probably understood by now. But yeah, does anyone else have any takes on it? I can't see hands up, by the way, if your hands are up.
Don't expand.
Don't expand.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the scenario states that the chance has arrived to expand your business to a whole new country. Yeah.
Do you think the not expanding, and for example, like say the financial effect that it could have because you are struggling because of COVID, do you think not expanding, because this is incorrect in terms of slave labor to do, is the right decision for the company, which might mean that the company kind of might have to make a tougher decision where they might have to literally shut down?
Well, if that's well, they may end up facing backlash because of the whole slave labor issue as well. So then they'll be going through the whole COVID scenario, and then they'll be going through the slave labor issue as well, wouldn't they?
Right. Okay, just to throw a span in the works, I'm going to be devil's advocate here to you, Ahmed. So,
Yikes.
you're welcome. For example, slave labor has been really common, especially in most Middle East countries. Some to name: Saudi, Kuwait, Qatar. It can happen, and it does happen to this day. India, even where it happens. There's a lot of Asian countries as well where it's common, and even South American countries. So slave labor is very predominant across the globe still. We like to say most of Western society is navigating away from this, and it's not a good idea. But let's just say most of your big competitors might have already kind of faced this and they've kind of got away with it. So you're thinking for your business, I'm struggling, and these lot have walked away without a scar. So how do you think? Do you think still it's worth sacrificing your company? I'm just playing devil's advocate. Do you think it's worth sacrificing your company for something that other people have walked away with?
But the situation was different. They probably did it at a time COVID wasn't around. Whereas you doing it when COVID's around and you probably face this backlash. I'm not saying they never faced a backlash. They could have, they probably would have, being a company that's very competitive in a market, in a market that's competitive, would have faced backlash regarding this issue, but they would have faced it in a scenario where this was a world free from COVID. So if you put that into context, you probably will be facing a bigger backlash than the other companies that did probably face backlash but didn't have to deal with COVID at the same time.
Good point. Okay. So my last spanner in your works is, do you think that maybe by getting involved, there's a way you could actually maybe change their mindset and kind of navigate and like get them away from using slave labor? So it's like, okay, guys, at the briefing and stuff, you sat there with the clients and it's like, okay, so we really want to go ahead with the project. We really like the initiative. We like the idea. However, we don't want and we're not gonna like encourage or support using slave labor. Do you think that's wise, or do you think it's just not worth the risk?
I mean, you could try to encourage them out of it, but don't get involved, if that makes any sense.
Okay, so how would you do that?
I'm not too sure, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I'm not saying there's a right answer. I'm just saying like I was just playing to see whether if I go
Yeah. No,
posing,
I know what
like,
I
is
know
there
what
a way? Because there will
Yeah.
be people in companies who'll be like, no, but there's this way, or there's this way. So, but yeah, it's always interesting to see everyone's takes. I mean, I think we can all agree this is a really tough situation, especially for any company to make, big or small. So there is, again, like Sana said, there's no right answer to any of these. There honestly isn't. Don't worry, I've not written down an answer somewhere. So yeah, don't feel bad if you're like, I walked away from that empty-handed, because it's really not like that. But yeah, so thank you for listening. I hope I've kind of given you an insight to how detailed design stages work, but also CSR, and how if we just kind of notice these things, for example, a lot of stuff that I said, or even you guys realize like, no, there's no point even having a briefing if this is the case, or yeah, you're not going to get past the technical design stage before realizing that this isn't it, or oh, there's going to be a lot of money spent by that point. So hopefully there's like some thoughts being put in your mind of how to go about these things, or these things exist, and how maybe when you guys get into industry, how you intend to navigate through them, or kind of process them, or change your narrative and their narrative where you get involved. But throw out any questions you have for me now, and thank you for listening. I'll put it back on. I'll stop sharing my screen so I can see you guys. Okay. Yeah, I can see you guys, I think. No, no one has their cameras on.
I mute myself. I don't know I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear
Yeah,
me? Yeah. Okay. Good. I don't know what just happened with my teams right now. So thank you, Ayman. That was indeed very descriptive and informative. I mean, I'm sure CSR is no doubt a very important aspect in a workspace, and the interactive scenario discussion you organized today was really very helpful to share each other's opinions and brainstorm the solutions. So thank you so much for enlightening that with us today. I'll just quickly move on to a short Q&A because I'm sure we have already crossed the line, but that's okay. So if Ryan and Osama have any questions, do drop in on the chat box, and I will just ask you two of the questions that I received. So how to plan or create a CSR program exactly?
Sorry, I was just reading the chat, so it's my fault. Can you read the question again?
No problem. So the question is how to plan or create a CSR program.
Okay, so with CSR programs, it's essentially up to your company and you guys' narrative. Again, like we've discussed, when it becomes bigger firms, it probably will come down to predominantly the hierarchy. So the people more above, and even HR are normally put in charge of stuff like this. But for companies which are smaller, even like for example Team Esteem, CSR can be managed by each person. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a program. So you don't have to have like 10 commandments which you have to follow to be a good human and a good employee, it's almost like stuff that just being aware that, okay, hang on a minute, this doesn't feel right, and projecting that to the right people. But if you feel like you need pointers, then maybe it's like a thing that companies can create, because yeah, it's not common. It's kind of just a HR issue if you feel something like that. Or it's kind of like, oh, the people above you will handle it because it's above my pay bracket. So it's like if we stop having that kind of ideology and we kind of think, okay, this is wrong, this needs dealt with, and more people kind of put their voices up, which is happening now more commonly through social media, and even in companies, people are like kind of fighting for their rights. I think that's the only way. So a program, I don't know, but I think it's just individuals just having that confidence and being allowed the space to kind of voice their opinions.
Perfect. Well said. So, just one more question. Is there a checklist to be kept in mind while planning out the detailed design stages?
Yeah, so Reba is a really common one that people go by because it's kind of like music. It has one language and everyone understands it. So I remember when I first joined, they were like, "Oh, we're at stage 5," and I was like, "Cool. What does that mean?" Whereas for someone in their stage where they're like, "Okay, stage 5, construction, cool. Okay, so now everything's important. Everything's kind of go, go, go." So it becomes like a national language of their own that they've kind of got. In terms of checklist, they kind of have that on its own. So Reba have created that circle that I showed you guys, and it's essentially kind of falls into there. If you want to read more into it, it can be seen on their websites. There's other multiple websites you can find them on, but that is the main checklist, is those 7 key points. And in those points will be like subsections of like criterias, but
Yeah.
those again are set by your organizations, what they have an understanding of what they want you to do by each stage. Yeah.
Perfect. So that's it from my side. I can't see any questions on chat box. So if Ryan and if someone want to ask anything, here's your golden opportunity to ask Ayman any question. I'll just wait for a couple of seconds if they want to raise their hand or type in any message. Um,
Cool. I think we're good. I think
yeah, I think yeah.
oh,
So yeah, thank you. That was really very helpful, Ayman. I mean, formal CSR programs can boost employee morale and lead to greater productivity. So this seminar, I think we all learned a lot how to incorporate this in our workspace. So I would also like to thank all the attendees who joined today, especially Ryan and Osama, for your constant interactions with Ayman as well. If everyone could just turn on their cameras, we could take a screenshot for our social media. That would be great. Ryan and Osama, if you could turn on your cameras.
that's a no, clearly, apparently.
Yeah.
No? Are we gonna have
Yeah.
it? Oh, yay! Wait, why can't you, Ryan? I'm on my phone. That's not a good enough excuse. Osama looks like he's on his phone. Outside. Even better, we get outside.
Yeah, you
Okay.
can take a phone selfie, right? You can do this. Come on, you're the best cheerleader I've ever seen till now. Okay, I'll just yeah. Oh yeah, we've got him.
Oh, wow. Wait, what's happening? Okay, anyway, I think I know where you are. Okay,
Okay,
right.
I'm just going to click the screenshot button so everyone smile. Okay, I hope the screenshots have clicked. Otherwise, that's just really sad. I'll just click a screenshot from the recording later then. um, okay, I would just like to give a couple of announcements before everyone just leaves. Sorry, our crowdfunding page is live, so if you'd like to donate any amount to help us build a smart home, we'll be grateful to you. If you're in Edinburgh, you can also book a slot and visit our prototype at the campus. So you can book a slot on Eventbrite. You can check the links on our social media. And if you're interested to learn about replicating reality with respect to modeling in construction and future of construction with respect to scaling innovation, do register and attend our networking conference, which is going to be on this Wednesday, 28th July, via Meet, where our sponsors and industry experts from CSIC, COYO, Norskin Windows, Thornton Tomaseri will be interactive in a panel discussion and later on in a one-on-one conversation with all the attendees. I will just share the links on the chat box as well. So feel free to spread the word and join in with your friends and colleagues on 28th. I'm sure you all already follow us on social media, but still, like on all the social media like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, keep liking our posts and improve the engagement. That would be really helpful to all the members of Team Esteem. So I think that's about it. Thank you so much, Ayman. That was great. Thank you for taking your time out, everyone, for attending the seminar and for hosting the seminar. It was really very helpful, and I will virtually see you guys soon again. Thank you again. Bye
Yeah.
bye.